Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and about a week ago I talked about a musician known as David, an individual who had a body show up in the front of their Tesla while they were on tour. Now obviously that's a pretty hard-hitting introduction to go with, but yeah, this is actually a story that's been going on in Los Angeles for a couple weeks now. So for a quick recap, a decomposing female body was found in a Tesla that was registered in David's name. Now at the time when the body was found, the medical examiner could confirm that it was a female body, but was unable to determine the age, race, ethnicity due to the body being severely decomposed. And of course, as his body was found, David was at the time, I believe, still on tour, throwing out even labubus for the world to grab. So of course, at the time, the only thing that could be identified on these bodies was apparently a tube top, black leggings, yellow metal bracelet, metal stud earrings, and of course, most importantly, a tattoo on a right index finger that said, "shh." Now, according to the medical examiner, that's all that they found at the time. But of course, internet investigators also decided to jump in and found that that tattoo also belonged to our friend David. So of course people looked closely at the tattoos on his hand and found matching tattoos there. Of course that's not a smoking gun, but it's a coincidence that's going to lead into a whole different pile of coincidences that'll make people really wonder. But about a week after this body was found, the actual body was identified as a 15-year-old girl known as Celeste Rivas. Now, Celeste, at the time, was also apparently missing, and according to one of the posters that you could find, you could see that she was last seen in April 5th of 2024, and she was born in 2010. Putting her age at apparently her disappearance around 13. Now, of course, Celeste was 15 when she died, so she was apparently missing for quite a while. So, of course, people also started to look through more of David's social media posts, and there was a pretty alarming one that ended up coming out with them sitting together on a live stream.
I media trained you.
No, you didn't.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of
Really good.
Okay,
It's been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh my! Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes.
So yeah, that was a pretty wild thing to be saying on camera, no joke about that, but also it made me want to dig a little bit deeper, because apparently this girl that went missing, who is clearly a minor and is interacting with this person who is actually a full-on adult. Now, of course, I've seen people argue the age gaps between them and saying that, oh, he's not much over 18. Here's the reality of it, okay? David's current age, if we want to look at it right now, is about the age of 20. He was born in 2005, according to, again, Wikipedia and all these birthday sites. So 20 years let me preface this by saying, okay, this person is well into adulthood, and the age gap is not something like a 20-year-old with an 18-year-old or even a 19-year-old or whatever. It's 20 and somebody that is 15, okay? There's a pretty big difference between the two right here. So I just want to kind of nip that little bit of copium right here. Now, this Tesla, to revisit it again, was actually a Tesla that was found, I believe, on Doheny. So it was actually located in a pretty nice neighborhood of Los Angeles. And the car was then ticketed, it was then towed, obviously, and then once it was towed to a yard, the workers who were at the yard actually had said that a Tesla was emanating a foul odor and attracting flies. And once the car was then searched, the body was found apparently in the frunk of a Tesla. So it makes me wonder just how this body was even stored there, because the frunk of a Tesla is not it's not spacious enough, in my opinion at least, to be stashing a body, okay? Not that I would know how to necessarily do that, but just giving you my perspective of it. Anyways, the body was then found, and it was obviously severely decomposed. Now, obviously, at the time when this happened, I had two things that popped up in my head. Teslas are vehicles that have cameras pretty much everywhere, and usually those cameras are always rolling. So I was wondering if the LAPD could go to Tesla and subpoena that information through them, or maybe David, who was cooperating at the time, according to their spokesperson, could just provide that information. But then again, Teslas are not vehicles that record every single thing. Unless there's an accident, or you honk your horn, or you manually save videos, then something will be stored. And even then, it's always possible to delete the footage from your Tesla. It is also possible to somehow be lucky enough to recover that footage, even if it's deleted from a Tesla, but I'm starting to think that maybe that never existed to begin with. The other thing that ended up coming over here was obviously how the guy was still on tour at the time. A body is discovered in a car that is registered to your name, and yet he's still roaming free and performing. At the time, when I covered this last time, David wasn't even a suspect, and shockingly, at the time of recording this, he still isn't. Now, he had a residence that was searched there, items that were seized, and up about a week ago, there was actually tour dates you could see. In my previous video, you could literally still, from what I understand, purchase tickets to his show in Los Angeles. And I almost kind of considered it just to sort of see, not buy tickets to the show, but just sort of see if it was even gonna happen. But of course, you know, at the time the shows were about to happen, he started canceling things in Seattle. And then, of course, now the entire the entire tour is canceled. Because, yes, the whole death is making pretty big waves in the news. And obviously it should. It's a pretty mysterious situation, and one that I think we all really want to know the answer to. So ultimately, going down further into it, right, I'm still wondering what the truth could be here, because if it's actually this guy, right, because again, if this is a girl that is found in a car registered to him, a girl that he knew pretty seemingly well, since they were apparently, allegedly, on stream together. The only thing I can think of is, you know, this girl died through the hands of somebody else close to this person, because at the time the story was reported, the vehicle apparently was accessed, or could have been accessed, by multiple people. And I'm sure the LAPD are now trying to time the movements of the vehicle with where David was, just to see if they can, you know, find a possible alibi or start ruling out possible alibis. Now, the other thing is, obviously, because the body was so severely decomposed, there are other aspects of the medical examination that still have yet to conclude. Things like, for instance, a toxicology report, which could show that Celeste may have OD'd, but that wouldn't necessarily explain, if she did OD and die because of that OD, how she was found stashed into a vehicle long enough for her to be severely decomposed. There are still so many things that feel off and so many answers we still need. But the story almost feels like it's pieced together and investigated through the eyes of the internet long before the LAPD even has a chance to conclude or do anything. Now, before we go any further, I do want to establish something. Celeste was 15 at the time of her death, as reported. She knew David a bit before that, and as you can imagine, allegedly, she is a minor, and he is clearly an adult. Now, there were a few things that came out a couple days ago when it came to his friends even. Now, Celeste Rivas was believed by David's friends to be a 19-year-old USC student. Now, again, I looked at an image of this girl really quickly, and to be real with you, I don't know where this argument could come from. She very much looks like a young girl, okay? So for anybody in the David Copium camp, especially his friends, who were apparently really shocked to find out that she was underage, because apparently she was present at multiple age-restricted events. The friends told the publication that they frequently saw this couple together, and they believed they were romantically involved. Now, this is again the statements of his friends. Okay, they thought this girl was clearly an 18, 19-year-old, and they also believed that they were romantically involved. Now, of course, you might be wondering, how the hell is she getting tattoos, Muda, and how is she getting into, you know, age-restricted venues? And that's because law enforcement agencies confirmed that Riva Hernandez had multiple fake IDs, which could have given the teen access into such events. So yeah, it's something that happens. It's one of the reasons why you just have to be really careful. Even if somebody here's my rule of thumb, okay? If you look really young to the point where you have to be asked for an ID, you're just too young in general to be doing anything with, okay? Whether that be romantically, whether that be serving you a drink, whether that be doing anything that is typically age-locked for people over the age of 18 or 21. That's just that's how you stay safe. That's how you keep minors safe, okay? That's just good advice that I can give you freely in general. Now, of course, David's friends didn't know too much about her, and they only saw her with David at social events. So the thing that I have to kind of ask the friends in the circle too is like, you really thought she was 19? I mean, I've seen the photos. I think the world has seen the photos. She clearly looks young, okay? It's not a situation of, oh yeah, I could easily confuse this fucking 15-year-old with a 20-year-old. No. She is clearly too young. And that's one of the questions I really feel, the friends should have brought up. Now, of course, even a teacher who apparently remains unidentified here also acknowledged that when I taught her, she met this dude on social media. He was a rapper in Los Angeles. He came and got her. She ran away from home. She was gone for like a month. The cops found her in Hollywood, brought her back to our school. Now, again, if this is necessarily true, and again, please take a lot of this stuff with almost a grain of salt as well. There's still things that are being confirmed, and there's still things that people are bringing into the story that, are unverified. And if we roll with unverified information, you could actually be damaging the case. But again, this is apparently somebody who claims to be a teacher at the school they taught Celeste at. And if any of this is true, it's a pretty damning admission that, at least it seems law enforcement had some idea ahead of time about all of this going on, or at least this relationship, which shouldn't have been legal. It shouldn't have happened. Now, from footage that was captured apparently just after 7 a.m. on March 19, 2024 in Lake Elsinore, California, which, remember, this is where Celeste was apparently disappearing from, there was footage that recently resurfaced of her absolutely being caught on CCTV camera. So you can see, according to, this footage, that would be Celeste. And of course, she's headed down and down and down and down and down until, of course, from this liquor store, you could see her running this way. Now, the thing is, if she was returned in January 2024, from Hollywood at the time, that means the police have an understanding of this. So it's hard for me to not sort of look at all this and think to myself, is it even the LAPD or, just law enforcement that also failed her as well, too? I mean, I'm not going to put blame on a young child, obviously. But, sometimes when things are going rough, there's runaways. And the point of this is obviously that if there was a record established of where she could be going to, why was she just missing? Why wasn't this investigated beforehand? This is something that's so odd. Now, of course, the internet decided to go back and see when David had met Celeste. And apparently there are mentionings that she's about as young as 12 when they had actually met. Now, remember, okay, these are all allegations, once again, but if you go back to her poster, remember that she was born in 2010. So you can kind of do the math when you see in the next set of video or the photos that I show you, she really, the post she makes, you can kind of date how old she is at that time. So I believe her birthday is September of 2010. So again, one user on Reddit, on r/hiphopheads, 10 days ago, starts posting these Discord screenshots. Now, if you look at these Discord screenshots, obviously, one of the things that, again, I can't confirm this myself, but Celeste, David are together, allegedly in this screenshot together. But of course, if you look into the messages that have allegedly been grabbed from the Discords that David and Celeste were sitting in, you've got David going, Celeste in here, and of course, Celeste is going, hi, David. Now you can see over here that, the days this is posted is in 2022. Yeah, here, I'll just do the quick little Jaguar math for you, okay? 12. So that's one of the reasons why people have been sort of throwing that specific number around. It just didn't spawn out of nowhere. It spawned out of, I believe, reasonable, math being done on this Discord, okay? Or at least looking at the times these posts were made. And of course, you see people on the actual Discord allegedly going and saying he has a girlfriend. And of course, one user going, yeah, her name is Celeste. Now, again, all of these are allegations, and these messages are, the last time I even saw them, I've said the same thing. If you've watched me for a while, I have a policy that unless I can log into the server, which is Discord in this case, and refresh on camera, I always give an element of doubt to the veracity of these messages, but they've been widely shared around. And these are, again, the reasons why people are looking at the age of Celeste, or at least pinpointing it to be 12. Some have even went as young as 10, for instance. And of course, one of those users is on, right here. She was 10, not 11, not 12, not 13. And of course, the reason they really do look at it was they looked at Celeste. They looked at, again, the actual member join date, which was January 4th, 2021. She was 10 years old in January of 2021. He was 15. In fact, the date she joined the server was so close to the new year, I'm willing to bet they talked elsewhere outside of Fortnite before Discord or knew each other, met online in 2020. Again, that is conjecture. But David, from what I understand, if we actually look at the join date for David, like David was apparently quoted to be born March 28th here. So March, David would, yeah, I mean, you're looking at somebody that is 15 going on to 16 years of age. And it makes me wonder, like, what is a fucking 10-year-old and a 16 or 15-year-old even talking? Like, you are just two different types of people, okay? Like, you are, I'm sorry to say, it's a weird connection, all right? It is what it is, and I just wanted to point this out. Now, I hope that this girl is clearly in a far better place. I think ultimately there was a lot of people that failed her, not just David. But I personally don't think David is innocent in how he allegedly pursued this relationship with a minor, and it's definitely something I'm sure the LAPD is looking at, okay? Now, since I last talked about the story, David has had the tour canceled. Apparently, social media accounts have been sort of withering away. Posts are being deleted, and even his Reddit apparently turned out to have him moderating his Reddit, which is where a lot of this investigation started. Never a good chance to have somebody who is the target of an investigation, the person of interest, moderating the place where this discussion is taking place. So there was a lot of individuals, this was from TV Fandom Lounge, where again the Reddit moderation debacle raises eyebrows. In the middle of these developments, fans noticed unusual activity, where quite a few posts that raised concerns about the case and lyrics were removed. And since Burke is listed as the only moderator, users are accusing him of attempting to silence discussion. Again, I'm pretty sure if there was another moderator, I don't know if you as a user can pull like a mod audit or something on Discord, or not Discord, Reddit. But yeah, you can see over here that David, 14 hours ago, the mod who warned about the sub has been suspended and is no longer a mod. And of course, the post was deleted by mods too. What's up, guys? I finally have Reddit, which this is apparently an account, David Reddit. David's bitch ass is currently the only mod. David is currently the only mod on the sub. A mod got banned and another left. That leaves David's ass the only mod of the sub. Let's move to David 2. And that is exactly what the community and the investigators for this did. They went to David 2. And this is incredibly popular, to the point where it's got 52,000 weekly visitors, 17,000 weekly contributions. Again, people are really investigating this like crazy. And obviously they should be, right? If this is a chance for, again, a little girl to get justice, a little girl that died way too early in her prime. In her youth, really, not her prime, her youth. This needs to be solved. And again, they've built a convenient timeline for you to see. So mid-August 15th, 17th, friends do lose contact with Celeste. August 8th, 9, David performs Dallas and Austin, Texas. Celeste accompanies him. Tesla's with them from Texas. Car had Texas plates. Neighbors said they hadn't seen that car for a while. And I'm sure there's sources that are going to be around here for you to see. But you can see that, you know, the fans, the investigators have put together a cogent timeline for the story. Now, for the official David Reddit, you might be wondering, whoa, does that have any communication going on in it? No, actually, it's completely restricted. So yeah, there is, again, no conversation happening over here, which is, again, incredibly suspicious. And I'm sure you can probably say, hey, there's some misinformation floating around. But look, this is the middle of an investigation. And at the end of the day, publicly, that just looks bad. Now, one of the people that have been investigating on this, even so far as to go to the actual location where the car was apparently towed from, and you can see that they found what appears to be a Tesla car. Now, one thing that I can say very clearly, and the comments have been rightfully hitting this, is if you ever find something like this, this is what we call possible evidence. Do not touch this with your fucking hands, brother, okay? You are possibly fucking up fingerprints here. You know what? I would just call the LAPD, tell them you found a high-profile piece of evidence. I'm sure they would gladly drive down to you and pick this shit up in an evidence bag, just so nothing is being destroyed. Now, from what I understand, the LAPD was contacted and this card was given, but it's definitely something that I'm sure the LAPD is going to try to match with the Tesla and see if it works. But yeah, it's just interesting to see it kind of thrown out here. So they say on the afternoon of August 27th, a parking enforcement officer marked the Tesla, noting the position of its tire. And then on September 3rd, the officer issued a citation to the Tesla for violating the 72-hour parking ordinance. And then the vehicle was impounded. So the reason why that is important, obviously, is because this body allegedly was sitting inside this car for a pretty long time, and it starts to make sense on why things are severely decomposed, right? It's crazy to think, right? In an upscale neighborhood of Los Angeles, you can have a dead body just sitting in a car, and it takes quite a fair bit of time You literally until it gets impounded or at least sent to a tow yard before anything gets detected. It's just crazy. Now, I don't know the ins and outs of body composition. I'm not, a doctor or like a forensic expert here, but I'm sure that it can't be good for the evidence to be decomposing day after day. From my understanding, if there are any discoveries to be gathered from this, the coroner really doesn't have a whole lot of time to work together. Usually you want the body as fresh as you can so you can do all your determinations and start sending things into labs so you can start getting answers that you can then pass off to the detectives. But the car was actually found incredibly close to the home that David was staying at. And the home that David stayed at was this like mansion that wasn't really owned by him. It was actually rented by his manager, Josh Marshall, for about $20,000 a month. Yeah, I know. Imagine paying rent that high, right? Some people will pay insane amounts to live in Hollywood Hills, okay? I don't understand it, but it is what it is. The LAPD raids the house and they actually took several articles from it, so I'm sure that's being examined closer. From what I understand, I think even like computers were grabbed, and I'm sure they're looking and subpoenaing a lot of his Discord records just so they can also understand the connection that exists between David and Celeste. Like you can see right over here that the security system was placed at the entry and exit points, so realistically, you should not be able to, be entering or exiting this house without at least being caught on the security system. Now look, security systems can be fucked with. David, apparently, according to the landlord, had the access. But I'm also sure that the security company that the, things work with can be, not investigated, but can be subpoenaed for that possible footage. But if David is so cooperative, hopefully he's already passed on that footage to the LAPD. And I'm sure they're going to be looking at the footage, maybe timing it up with once they get her, time of death or exact specifications for what happened to Celeste, they can start lining dates and times up to either exonerate David or implicate David. It's just weird to me, though, that the car was apparently this close to the home, and it allegedly contained this body, right? Like, I sort of think to myself, listen, if there's some grandiose murder, and what people really do have to understand is David isn't caught because David is some mastermind. David is a 20-year-old, okay? This is not Dexter Morgan trying to hide a body. David is an individual that, is 20 years of age, okay? David is not somebody that has a whole lot of life experiences, or really anybody around David isn't super duper smart. What really is the saving grace for him here is how decomposed that body is. The LAPD and David have both not made statements, which is weird because, I would express, or I would definitely expect some sort of like public remorse, or not remorse, but like public shock and sadness, maybe even proclaim a little bit of innocence, but it hasn't happened, right? The LAPD has been incredibly quiet about the situation, which I assume because of how high profile it's gotten that everyone is talking about it, that they're building together the most ironclad case that they can show in front of a grand jury down the road and absolutely nail whoever was behind this fucking heinous crime. Because at the end of the day, you really have to look at it, right? Like, it's a little girl that lost her life. And I personally think that every adult around her necessarily really just didn't, they failed her. They really did. There isn't a reason why a minor like this should have been allowed this much contact with somebody who has a clear power dynamic over her, somebody that is clearly older than her. And ultimately, this is a young girl that should have had some monitoring going on with this connection, right? Like, it's not inherently illegal for an adult to hang out with a minor, right? But it definitely should raise a lot of red flags to people in the household, to family members, to individuals, that yes, my daughter or my little sister is hanging out with this fucking rapper from LA, and maybe I should keep some close tabs on that. So really, I feel like everyone failed this little girl. That really is what I'm thinking of. Now, obviously, David is roaming around free, and I don't think it's because, he's necessarily somebody that is a super mastermind. He could absolutely be innocent, okay? There's a couple things that sort of ran into my head, and I'll theory craft just a little bit. There is possibly a chance that this girl might have been pregnant, and I'm sure that could have come out sometime, once the medical examiners have more of a chance to get some tests back. If she was pregnant, I have to imagine that in this entire story, for somebody who has such a budding career, look, he's already involved with what appears to be a minor. That's never going to be a good look. And let's assume that murder had happened. Let's assume that David did murder her. Okay, not saying that he did. It's not innocent until proven guilty. Very important mantra to keep. That could be a motive, right? Man was worried about his career. ices a young girl and possibly, the child she's carrying, just so things never get out. Okay, that's a very heinous way to look at it. Okay, that's a very dark road to go down. There's another situation where, it played in my head that until we get a toxicology report, she might have OD'd on a drug. And because she OD'd on a drug, this is not something you wanted near you, especially as your career is blowing up. So get rid of the body. Or there could be something even more sinister. There could be a third person related in this situation that had access to this vehicle and had access to this girl, and that person wasn't David. There's a lot of things at play here. And these are the kind of theories that I'm assuming any LAPD detective is kind of coming up and talking about in their head and running through. But ultimately, these theories have to be substantiated with real, hard-hitting evidence, which is what I'm assuming the LAPD is kind of going on. There's people who are wondering that, could David escape? Could he private jet out of here? Look, with how high profile this case is, and the fact that people are up the LAPD's ass, there is no way this motherfucker is leaving the state of California, let alone Southern California, let alone LA County, okay? I think he's going to stay here until this is completely determined whether it's in his favor or not. Because let's say that David tries leaving, okay? That's such a bad fucking look. So ultimately, he's going to have to stay, either face the music if he really is guilty, or get away scot-free once the LAPD finds that maybe he had nothing to do with it. But ultimately, the story is just wild, man. I mean, you would think that I'm just going to say it right now, okay? I'm sure all of us are thinking it. The Netflix documentary that covers the story in 2 years will be fucking insane, okay? It is what it is. That's just how this thing sort of plays out. The mystery surrounding the story is something that is so unique in the sense that, this is a high profile, this is a up and coming like musician. I'm sorry if I mentioned the word rapper that sort of came in. I was on r/hip hop head. So it's just kind of like firing synapses that shouldn't be fired. But this is a high profile musician from LA. This is somebody that is, whose career it was about to blow up. This is definitely a big hit against it. And it involves a little girl that, was missing, but apparently, you start looking at things even closer, and maybe she was just failed by the adults around her. She was somebody that was even investigated, or even not investigated, but this was somebody that was like a known quantity, or at least even the LAPD had an understanding of this relationship before. And there's so many questions that have arisen from this. And the fact that he's still roaming free as I'm talking is another thing that's almost infuriating to people, right? Because a lot of people have already written his guilt. But I'm just going to straight up say that there's definitely something deeper at play if he's still roaming free, or it's because the body is so severely decomposed that it is going to take that time for the LAPD to have a bit of evidence on them that is so ironclad that David could never even think of escaping from it. Remember, these agencies like to go for these high conviction ratings. They want to be able to present a case in front of the grand jury, especially a high profile case that leads in a conviction. Because let me tell you, if this girl doesn't get justice, there's going to be some hell to pay at the LAPD. That is for sure. And I don't think anybody wants that at the office. But ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mudahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.